welcome to Scotland's sunniest city. Anybody here from Glasgow today? We put the weather on just for you. That's good. So, yeah, I just thought I'd have a wee bit of a conversation with you. And it was good for a conversation as well, so please feel free if I'm into topics that you're interested in or things that you'd like to know. Just ask me questions as we go. We'll have a bit at the end. I'll stop 10 or 15 minutes before the end as well, and try and get a bit of a Q&A and the discussion going. And actually in that we've not necessarily just questions from me, but if there's areas that currently interest you in terms of technology and what you're doing, you'd like to have a bit of a discussion about that, I'm happy to do so. So yeah, I mean, my own journey, I suppose, is defined by my relationship to technology. I got hold of my first computer. My dad was a teacher, and he was unusual to be interested in the 1970s in computers. He wasn't a maths or a physics teacher, he was a social scientist. He was a history and politics, modern studies teacher. But he saw these computers kind of starting to come into schools and thought, these can do more than just big sums. There must be ways that I can use these for engaging teaching in other areas. So he kind of brought these machines home every weekend and tried to find new bits of software. Obviously in 1979 there wasn't an awful lot of software out there. And I got to play, and that's what I did to start with. Probably like many of us, my first interaction with technology was play. And that's a brilliant thing, because play excites you, encouraged to learn. In fact, because of play, I started to want to learn to program. Not because I wanted to learn to program, but because I wanted other games to be on the machine that I could only find at that point, physical listings of the code. So I had to type it in and debug it, and before I knew it, I learned how to program. All because of play and a desire to play. And I think, and I'll come back around to this, the Minecraft journey is really, really interesting. I mean, many of you will know about Minecraft, but also projects like Scratch come out of MIT, and I really try to engage young people, especially earlier and earlier, through play. And the Minecraft education initiative that's going on, which is nothing to do with us, it's a different part of the whole project. It's one of the most exciting things I've seen, because they've embedded a great coding syllabus and infrastructure right in the middle of one of the most popular games in the world. So that journey started off, and from that day at 9 years old, getting to play with that Apple II, I was hooked, completely hooked, and loved technology. But what I was really interested in, I was interested in technology for the sake of technology, but more importantly, it was what it could enable in my life. What could it do? And for me, probably the next biggest passion for me after technology is music. So I found myself as a keyboard player, and through the 1980s, playing lots of synth pop and stuff. Typically I had a microphone here and kind of 25 keyboards at all angles, and as soon as I could, I wanted to sequence those. Start to use. Seemed pretty normal now. And every laptop ships with GarageBand and the like. But back then was really, people just did think I was particularly weird. I'd get up my keyboard, and then the next thing I'd set up was a computer, and I'd put it on, and I'd try to automate things and do weird and wonderful things. But as time went by, everybody started to adopt these techniques, and everybody realized this was the way to use technology in that creative context. And I got really hooked on that. I got hooked on music and technology. I got hooked on film and video and technology. So by the time the 1990s came round, I found myself really interested in how we could properly use video. So there was a point in time in the 80s and 90s when all we did was stream analog video and try and lock it into a keyed window. So just create a black window and play it through. And it was like, oh, it's digital video. Well, actually it's not. It's a TV pretending to be digital video. But in the early 1990s, before MPEG even existed, we managed to start to get into compression, and non-linear compression as well. And digital video happened. Really, really exciting for me at that time. But again, it was a means to an end. It was a means to do cool stuff with technology. And that's been a theme for me, the whole way through. But all along the way, what happened almost by accident was, I wouldn't necessarily say I was the smartest kid in the room. I was the best programmer, but I seemed to be sometimes at the right place at the right time. You know, I'd work in a shop that sold computers, and somebody would come in and say, I've got a business, I've got a hairdresser's business, and I need software to book appointments, but I bought the computer and no software exists in the 1980s. So I was like, okay, I'll write it. So I started writing software for people to run businesses, and lo and behold, you find out you, by osmosis, know how to run businesses because you've listened to, I don't know, 24 people tell you how they run their businesses, and you've listened to it and you've analysed it and you've written software, and you realise actually pretty much they're all the same and they all have the same challenges, and it's about, you know, boring tracking accounts and paying bills, but then it's stock and customers and those relationships. So suddenly, without knowing it, I was building a little toolkit that was leading me to a lifetime in business and entrepreneurship. No background in my own family of business. You know, I said already my dad was a teacher. He then went on to be a lecturer at Murray House, the education college in Edinburgh, which became part of University of Edinburgh and became a sort of pioneer in interactive education. My mum, you know, teacher as well. You know, pretty much nobody around me were building businesses and doing what you would traditionally think of as entrepreneurial. But it was all I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to create things and find ways of getting them in front of people. And it's funny saying that in front of you guys now in 2017, because the barriers to creating something and getting them in front of people are pretty much nil. Now, that's not to say the barriers to creating something great and being incredibly successful are nil. They're not, they're huge, because the competition is now unbelievably significant and from all corners, and I'll come back to that. But at the time, you know, I was doing these kind of things. There wasn't a lot of people doing them, but also it was pretty difficult to work out how you could create something and get it out to an audience, you know, before the web descended on us in the mid-1990s. And I was studying here. I studied at University of Edinburgh to start with. I did 2 years there and then finished my degree here in Dundee. And I chair the Informatics Ventures Advisory Board in Edinburgh today. You know, a school I've got a huge connection with and love what they do. But at the time, I was kind of more interested in where my business was going to go. Although I was a second-year student and undergraduate, I was like, right, I've got an internship with NCR here in Dundee. I'd managed to get to Silicon Valley by the time I was 19. They paid for me to go and look at the nascent world at that point in 89 of relational databases. So I went to visit Oracle, Sybase, another company called Gupta. And at 19, I was given the big task of assessing which relational database should NCR define its new next generation architecture on. Sounds really important, but nobody at that point thought anybody was going to need it, strangely. So I looked at Oracle, I looked at Sybase, and I looked at Gupta, travelled all around the valley, and made the monumental conclusion that they should go with Gupta because Oracle didn't have a chance. I think I would say if I get one thing in 100 right, it'll be lucky. And that's, again, a theme I'll come back to. And that was my first big judgment error. You know, it's still a good product. And actually, from an interesting point of view, purely from an engineering perspective, it was the best by miles. It knocked Gupta knocked Oracle into a cocked hat. The interesting thing was, and a big lesson to learn, it's not about necessarily the best mousetrap. There's far more, and certainly sitting from where you guys sit and from where I sat as a computer scientist, you always think it's about engineering. Now, engineering is incredibly important, but it's actually quite rare that the best engineering wins. It's actually the best branded, marketed, you know. One would argue that Apple do engineer some fantastic laptops and products. They do, but they're not always the best. Yet as a brand, they have enormous success. You know, as a sales organization. Interestingly with Apple, and as evidenced by Steve Jobs leaving the company effectively in the hands of Tim Cook, even Steve Jobs, that guy who worshipped design over everything else, felt that the right guy to run the company was a supply chain manager. I mean, that's been a bit unfair to Tim Cook, but Tim Cook at the heart, Steve Jobs was quoted on this as saying, a lot of the success of Apple is because Tim Cook can go and work out how we can make millions of pieces of whether it be iPod or iPhone or Mac in a better price and a faster time with a better supply chain than anybody else can. So in the world of technology, it's just to say, we think we're the most important, and I would agree. Computer scientists are the most important people in the whole world of technology. But we need others, and we need other skills if we're really going to be successful. So I kind of, learned that as I went along. But I came back and again, a classic thing to do in the world of technology is I kind of made myself indispensable. I was the only person that knew all this stuff about those relational databases in NCR at the time, and I kind of kept it to myself, and I wouldn't tell anybody because I thought, that's how I'm going to get the most work out of this. That's a pretty stupid thing to do. But it's something we've probably all done. Oh, I know more than you know, and I'm not going to tell you because it makes me more important. You actually find out pretty quickly, the more you share, the more things start to go well, and more opportunities arrive. But I rocked up here into third year and did third and fourth year, and I was the first kid on campus to have a mobile phone. 1989, my phone, I'm kind of going like this because it was about this size. And I hold the dubious honour of the first person in the University of Dundee to be banned from the library for using a mobile phone. Because I thought it was perfectly acceptable socially at that point to have a giant phone on my desk that rang once every half an hour and answer it loudly, like have you ever seen Dom Jolly? Kind of, hello, yeah, I'm in the library. And eventually, after a week, the librarian had enough of me and exited me. Similarly, when I came to graduate, I got brought in for sort of Vivers for an interview to say, look, Chris, I thought when I found out I had an interview, I thought, oh God, maybe it could be Desmond Land, it could be, Desmond Tutu, or as we called it, or was a Douglas Hurd III, and I was like, oh no, this is not good. And I went in and said, look, do you know why you're here today? And I said, no, and I don't really. And they said, well, you're borderline 2-1 first. And I said, whoa, that's not what I was expecting you to say. And they went, no, well, you've done really well in your exams, but, we've only seen you twice in the whole of fourth year. And I said, well, I've been busy, I've been running this business here and this guy. And I said, oh no, we know. Well, what do you want to do now? And I said, well, I was thinking about coming back for a PhD. And he said, oh, that's really interesting. Why do you want to do that? And I said, well, I've got NCR lined up to sponsor me, and I've got a whole thing, human-computer interaction that I want to do. And the head of the department was a lovely guy. Turned around to me and went, Chris, why do you really want to come back? And he went, and I said, well, I'm going to keep the businesses running, and this is quite a good way of having a desk while I'm doing it. And, I quite like the idea of getting up at lunchtime and, coming in for a few hours every day. And he went, you don't want to come back here. You want to go and set your business up, and with our support, and they've been amazing ever since. But they were right. I should not have gone back to do my PhD, and I probably still would have been doing it today if I'd, the classic, we'll do it in 3 years, 20 years later, I would have still been, underway. But it was really not that I didn't have the thirst for knowledge and for higher learning, but the kind of entrepreneurial gene in me just wanted to get on and do stuff and wanted to steamroller over everything that was there. So the right route for me at that point was aided by the university, out the side door and into business. So that was kind of 1992. And what was really interesting, and again, anybody that have this feeling of I'd like to do something I don't quite know what, I didn't come out in 1992 with a master plan to build a games company. I didn't even have a master plan to build a next generation digital media technology business. I just wanted to write code and get paid for it, and still get up at lunchtime and have my own life to lead and all the rest of it. So it was kind of weird, and it's an easy decision when you're 21 and no real responsibilities. And I take my hat off to a lot of people that have a different start in their entrepreneurial career. They've had jobs, they've had big careers, and they've given it up to start a business. That's, to me, a tough decision. When you've got nothing and you've graduated, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm probably unemployable, actually. Every time I go for a job, I kind of find a way to work myself out of it because I'm never satisfied. I'm always questioning. And it turns out that's not a good thing in big corporations. You think it would be, but you start questioning them and tell them they're doing things wrong, and suddenly they're going, sorry, you've been in the door 5 minutes. What do you know? I go, well, I think I know better than you. And turns out that's not a good thing to say to people who are meant to be your boss and signing, and helping you progress in an organisation. So that was never going to work for me. So it was almost out of necessity that I did it. And really, from my perspective, it was like code monkey for hire. Give me anything and I'll get on with it. And that was okay, because I started to learn lots of lessons, started to make lots of mistakes. I started, I hired one or two people. I learned as I went. And oftentimes when I was starting the business, I thought, if only somebody would invest millions in me right now, I could build Apple by next year. Bill Gates will not see me coming. After a few years, I realised, thank God nobody invested in me then, or we'd have all gone, and we'd have been stuck again. So I then, I just iterated the business. After a couple of years, we had 5 or 6 people, and we were doing all this cool stuff with digital video. And somebody walked into my office one day and said, "We'd like to buy you." And I kind of went, "What, by me?" And I went, "Well, the business." Okay, and the other thing I learned quite early on is you just have to give the impression to people that you know what you're talking about at that point. Then you've got a bit of time to go and really learn what you need to know what you're talking about. And you only need to know about a week in advance what you need to learn at a certain point. If you've come from a background where learning is a constant thing and you can pick things up. So I thought, okay, right, I'll sell the business, that's interesting. And what do you want to do? Well, let's meet next week and talk about it. So again, days before the internet, I came out of that meeting and I picked the phone up to my dad actually, and I said, "Dad, do you know anybody that's ever sold a business before?" And he went, "I'm not really sure, it's academia, I don't know." And he went, "Wait a minute, there's a guy I met a few months ago in Edinburgh called Ian Ritchie. Ian sold his business to a big, giant Japanese company called Matsushita, who's parent company of Panasonic." He said, "He sold a business." And I went, "Great, have you got his phone number?" And he said, "Yeah." So I phoned him up and he said, "Oh, meet me for a cup of coffee." And I met Ian and I explained what I'd done in the past 18 months. My business was 18 months old. And he went, "You don't have much of a business yet, do you?" And I said, "No, I don't know why this guy wants to buy me." And he said, "Okay, here's what you go and say." And he told me everything. So I walked into the meeting the next day and I went, "Right, I want a term sheet from you. I want you to buy me for partial equity. I want to be the managing director of the new company. And the final decision is I want to choose the non-executive chairman." And the guy went, "Okay, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, okay, we can agree to all of that." Great, and off I went, just sold the company. So then I was sort of stuck saying, "Oh, okay, we now need to do this." So the first thing I did is I went back to Ian Ritchie and I said, "Ian, thank you so much. All your advice has played out. They've bought the company. It's great. There's only one more thing I want to say to you." And he said, "What?" I said, "Would you be my non-executive chairman?" So I pretty quickly hooked onto the fact. And again, before the days of things like Entrepreneurial Scotland and a lot of the great entrepreneurial support networks that are out there for you guys today, that finding somebody that had been through the journey before you and had similarities was light years better than sitting in a lecture theatre or reading a book or doing it. You had somebody to ask. And the most amazing thing that I found then was I kept asking more people to help me in for advice, and they all gave me it. They were more than happy. People who I'd go, "Wow, they're amazing. They built $1 billion business. I wonder if they'll speak to me." And they did. And I just asked simple questions, some pretty dumb questions as I now reflect on them, but they were brilliant. People are really generous with their time. And all I needed to do, rather than make every mistake, and I made plenty, was just before it was time to do something, go, 1992 with Rockstar. We created our own IP, we made lots of profits as well as lost money along the way, and ultimately, and I'll not go into all the detail of it, but we hit a point where after about 7 years, and it's a number you should look at because investors look at this number, 7 years is their cycle. They want to be in and out, a lot of investors, not all investors, in a 7-year period. So sure enough, 7 years came down round and they said, it's time to sell the business. And we said, no, it's not time to sell the business. And they went, no, it says in our book, it's time to sell the business. I went, but actually it's exactly the wrong year. If you give us another 18 months, we'll have new games ready for market, and that's the time to sell the business. But they thought they knew better than us and put us on the market, and we sold the business. Now, we had a choice to sell the business to, on one hand, to a company called Bethesda, who some of you, if you're interested in games, will probably have heard of. And in 2003-ish, which would have been, Bethesda were just starting to emerge as a new force in games, and they're now huge. They're an amazing company. And we said, yeah, we should sell to Bethesda. And the investors went, well, they're quite interesting, but this public company over here in America who want you to, Chris, to be the president of this NASDAQ company, and they're going to give us lots of shares in the business, and we'll own a big chunk of it. And I said, yeah, but we know them, and we don't think they're the right company to sell to. And they went, no, we think we know better than you. And I said, but they're called BAM. There's maybe a hint in the name somewhere. And sure enough, within 6 months of buying us, they went BAM. And we lost everything. So they'd bought us with shares. So we had lovely share certificates that said on paper, we might be worth quite a lot of money someday. And then overnight, it was gone. So really, really interestingly at that point, you're sitting there having, this would be 2003, so 10 years since I started the first business, heart and soul, my whole life had been in it. I'm theoretically on the street. I'm sitting there with nothing. And that's pretty depressing for the first 5 minutes. You have to let yourself, actually, to be honest, the most depressing thing about that was having to stand up in front of 120 people that we had in one location, 200 and something people we had in the company at that point, and tell them that the journey was over. That we'd sold to this American company and we put all our faith in this being the next chapter of the story, but it was gone. And that was pretty bad. Pretty bad thing to have to do. But actually, on reflection, if I look around that, virtually that group of people, every single one of them went out and started to do something really great within days. Some of them set up new companies, some of them went up and worked for other people, some of them decided the games industry wasn't for them, but there's no one that I know from that period of time that is now not doing something amazing that they want to do. So it's a different thing because you're sort of, especially in the UK culture, you're brought up to think of a company failing like that, something going wrong, is an absolute monumental disaster for everyone. Everyone's out their job, they're on the streets. Actually, for tech businesses, it's often the catalyst for some amazing things to start to happen, new companies to be formed. Now, it's not something we aspire to. We don't aspire to build companies and have them fail, but it's just something that happens. And a lot of, again, this network that I'd started to build up of entrepreneurs, some from technology, some from retail, just good people that I knew, were all phoning me and saying, don't worry about this. This is a step on the journey. Learn from what's here. Take your time. Don't rush into anything. Decide what you want to do next. So I set up a games company the next day. So at that point, and there's somebody I've not mentioned in the story up to now, my best friend, who is a much, much better engineer than I am, and has stayed an engineer the whole way through our journey. We met in our first day at high school when we were 11. We went off to Edinburgh University together, we interned at the same company together, and after I'd founded the business, after about a year when I was pretty confident I could pay his wages, I asked him to come and join us. So he's been sort of my co-founder of all the businesses since then. And he and I sat down and said, okay, what do we do? And we said, well, Bethesda will give us some contracts to keep us going, so that's good because we need to pay our mortgages, so that's something. But who do we take with us out of 250 people that we've got? And he simply sat and said, here are the list of the 6 best engineers that I've ever worked with in here. That's all I want. I went, we've got 250 people, we could go and get finance. And he went, think about what's happened for the past 7 years. A lot of the problems we've had have been, the team hasn't been exactly the team we needed. Let's not compromise. When we start 4J Studios, let's make sure that every single person that comes in the door deserves their seat, that we think they're some of the best people we've ever seen, or they've got the best potential we've ever seen. And actually, if they turn out not to be right, we politely move them on. You know, let's not do it, and let's not expand because we feel like we should expand. And I agreed. I said, yeah, that's a great idea. You know, it's exactly what we should do, and that's the rule that we've lived by ever since. So today, 4J Studios has slightly under 30 people. 2/3 of them are in Dundee, and 1/3 just outside Edinburgh in East Linton. I'll come back and talk about Minecraft in and of itself in a bit. But 4J today makes 7 versions of Minecraft, or is it 8 now? So it's PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, Nintendo Wii U, and Nintendo Switch. 7 versions. And we have 7 programmers. Now, Microsoft would say to us that for the size of projects we're doing, we should probably have more like 70. And we go, no, we've just got the best 7 you can imagine, and we can deliver it, and we do. And to many people, it's incomprehensible. How can you possibly do that with 7 of those, and then about another 20 artists and designers and animators? And people encourage us, say, well, why don't, if you can do that with 7, why not go and hire 70? We go, no, we'll do it with different businesses. We'll grow smaller businesses that have got shared vision, that have got excellence at the heart of them. And actually, we want to get out of the way of people developing great technology. Because mostly when we look at big companies, they put people in the way of making great technology. They put program managers in, they put senior program managers in, they have product managers mixed with program managers, mixed with others. They code review everybody's code, and we go, well, we don't really need to code review. We've worked with these people for 20 years. We know how good they are. We just let them get on with it. Now, that's fine when you're making a video game. I wouldn't suggest that process works if you were writing a flight control system for an airliner with 300 people on board. But horses for courses. But it really has been an amazing journey for us over the past 10 years with 4J. You know, and with 30 people, we make orders of magnitude more profit and are more productive than we were with 250. And it's one of the most amazing things with what we do in software. And it's not all about, you know, people obsess in the press about how many jobs, you know, is it 1,000 jobs, 2,000 jobs, 3,000 jobs? Actually, the value we can create with small numbers of people is phenomenal. And it's then what we do with that value that's important. And I'll come back to that point. I'll take a little pause and talk about Minecraft for a second. Because, I mean, has anybody not played Minecraft? That's in the room. A couple of people. Shame on you all. Even the ones that haven't played it, I'm sure you know what it is. It's Lego in software. And it was weird, you know, because the first time we saw it, we were like most of the games industry going, what the is this? You know, this is like 8-bit. It's so retro, it's unbelievable. And then it's like, give it a try. And when we played it and went, wow, this is actually amazing. There's something amazing going on in here. So we were lucky enough that our friends at Microsoft, who we'd done a few games with, phoned us up one day and said, look, there's a bunch of guys in Sweden, you've maybe heard of them, they're doing Minecraft. And we said, oh yeah, we played it a bit, it's quite cool. Said, why don't you go and see them? Because they have no idea how to engineer for games console. We all know how difficult it is. They realize how difficult it is. They're doing everything in Java. They need a partner. So we kind of said, fine, we'll go up and see them. So we went up and saw them, and we spent a day geeking out with them and kind of, you know, showing them what we thought they should do with the game, and they said, fantastic. Now, this is a tiny company, and when we met them, Notch, the founder, had maybe 5 people with him. And within that small, tiny group, they were doing amazing things. And they were unleashed because they used Java, so in real time, they were prototyping and trying things. And writing pretty shonky code. Sorry, shonky is a Dundonian word for not very good. But, you know, pretty atrocious code. But we said, don't worry about that. We'll optimize, we'll engineer it, we'll make it amazing and run on any device you want. You guys focus on creativity. And they taught us something amazing. You know, we probably went in with a little bit of a sneery look to them, which was, you know, yes, you're not really programmers, you're kind of Java guys who do little games. You know, and within a month, we realized their genius. And they kept saying to us, can you teach us how to optimize? And we went, no, we don't need to. If we teach how to optimize, you'll stop being as creative as you are. Forget about your boundaries. Just do great stuff, and we'll try and work out the solution. And the partnership has been incredible. Incredible to the level that our Xbox 360 games now, the biggest selling Xbox 360 game in history. We outsold our other Scottish counterpart, Grand Theft Auto, a few months ago. We've sold over 20 million copies on that one format alone. And this is a game that we thought might do 1 million copies when we started out. We've done over 40 million copies on games console. And what's incredible, and this goes right back to the heart of something I said at the start of the discussion, which should apply to anything you can put your mind to. Marcus Persson Notch, that came up with this idea, this wasn't his first game. This was maybe his 20th game. And I think the other 19 were not that brilliant. But he just kept doing it, and he loved doing it. So he just did something else for fun, and then the 20th game, he realized people liked it. Now, in the games industry, normally how we do things is we come up with a great idea, we think, we go and spend millions and years developing it, and then we go, ta-da, here you are, world, we'll go and buy it. And if it doesn't sell 1 million copies in the first week, it's deemed a failure and thrown in the fire. Marcus didn't care. Marcus just wanted people to play it and enjoy it, and 1,000 people played it and enjoyed it, and went, well, it's amazing, 1,000 people. Then 5,000 people played it and enjoyed it, and they're all kind of giving him feedback and telling him what to do. So he went online, and this is before any Kickstarter or anything like this, about 10 years ago. He said, I've got a problem. I've got a day job. He used to work for King.com, the Candy Crush guys, but he left them because they had a restriction that he couldn't do other games, or they would own it. So he worked for an online travel company, and in his spare time made the game. And eventually he said, look, I've got no time. I'm working all day, I'm working on the game all night, sleep's almost nothing. I'm going to have to charge you. I don't really want to charge you, but I'm going to have to charge you, I think it was like 10 euros for an alpha version. It was pretty broken. But if you pay, enough of you pay a bit, then I'll be able to keep doing this. I don't need to maybe work full time. He went away on holiday and came back, and he had a year's salary in the bank. And he went, okay, amazing. Right, I'll give him a job up. And off he went, and he started doing it. And he did something incredible as well, and counterintuitive to us in business, is he published his bank account. Every dollar that came in for Minecraft, he left a running total, how much money had people spent on Minecraft. And suddenly it's at 100,000 euros. And a weird thing started to happen. People started cheering online, going, yay, Marcus, go, you've got 100,000 euros in the bank. Oh, let's buy more Minecraft. And off it went. And then he has 1 million euros in the bank. And he's like, oh, I've given up my job and I've hired some people. And look, we've got this cool flat in Stockholm. And it's going. And they're going, yay, spend more money with Marcus. And off it went. And then the numbers were getting crazy. So by the time we saw him, I think they were up to 60 or 70 million euros in the bank. And people are still, you'd normally think there'd be a backlash of, you scumbag, who do you think you are? No, people are like, go, this is amazing. So it kept going, and past 100 million, and off it went. Until it became so big, Marcus, he'd had several 100 million euros to himself at this point, and he had other people to share in it. He's an unusual individual, and one day he woke up and decided he'd had enough. So he put a tweet out and said, does anybody want to buy the company? And Microsoft phoned the CEO and said, is he serious? And I don't know, what's he said? And he said, go and look on Twitter. And he went, oh, let me go and ask him. And so he put the phone down and went, are you serious? And he went, yep. And I went, well, if you go, I'll go. And he went, okay, let's see what we can get for it. And some of you may know, so within 6 years of coming up with the game, he sold the business for $2.5 billion to Microsoft. Rumour has it, I couldn't confirm it if I knew, but rumour has it someone, probably a Chinese company, offered another $1 billion on top of that, and they wouldn't take it. And they went, no, Microsoft, that's enough. $2.5 billion is enough for us, and we'll do it. Unbelievable. What a story. One guy literally from his bedroom, but used the web for distribution, communicated with a fan base and created a community nobody had ever seen, and created that amount of value in that short a period of time. And that's not limited to games. Those tools are out there. If you're passionate enough about something, if you can deliver the technology, amazing things will happen. So to open up a Q&A, before I do, let me just talk about a couple of other things that we're up to. Too many to list here today, but I think importantly, we've got a really exciting business in Edinburgh at the moment called Vsquared. So Vsquared is exciting for a number of reasons, not least of which because it's based on really strong data analytics. This came from a point where I was running a business, and so was a friend of mine separately, where we were spending money on television. Now, you probably think, and the world thinks at the moment, that television's a dead medium. Well, ask yourself the next time, if you do get a chance, if you watch any television at all, why all the biggest online games companies advertise on television. Why does Trivago, the fastest growing travel business on the internet, spend most of its money on television? Well, I'll tell you why. Because it's the cheapest way to acquire customers to your business there is when you want to acquire in volume. It's miles cheaper than Google and Facebook. It's a big secret they don't want you to know. They're really expensive. TV's not. TV's really cheap. The biggest problem with TV is, until we came along, nobody could tell you analytically what worked and what didn't work. And then we got some great guys, effectively graduates from Edinburgh, who'd gone and worked in analytics and financial services for a number of years, to found a business to solve this problem. And they've solved it. They've solved it in a way that we thought we could solve a little bit of the problem. Turns out the business now, 4 or 5 years in, we're in 38 countries, thousands of brands, big brands like Expedia, which we thought, yeah, they would use us, they'll use us. But some of the big car brands are using us now. Brands that we didn't think had any real online presence or way to measure, they're doing it. And this fundamentally is an idea that exists for 2 reasons. Well, 3 if you include. 1, we could see the problem. But 2, big data analytics is there. The science has always been there, but the back end to power it is now available to everybody. 5 years ago, it was pretty tough. We had to try and spin up AWS, Amazon Web Services to make this happen in a way that was scalable. Today, it's easy. It's so easy to do it. 5 years before that, a decade ago, we would have had to spend millions out the box on hardware to stick in data centers without knowing whether we would ever need it to be able to use it because of customer demand. That's why small businesses couldn't exist in this big data world. Now we can. Amazon specifically has changed the world. And this business, I would suspect, will be one of Scotland's biggest ever digital businesses, biggest ever software businesses. And it really was able to be started with 3 or 4 people. We now have a lot more than that and sales across numerous countries. But it's amazing. And we're starting to look at that idea of how do we take the best engineering talent that we've got here and think about great commercial ideas to build it. We don't need to do it in the Valley. We don't need to do it. We can do it here in Scotland really, really easily. So that's a fantastic business for us. And we're now getting ready for a second one. I can't say too much about it, but it's in the world of insurance. Not domestic insurance, but commercial insurance. And again, it's using this idea that data resources are out there, the data talent is in our hands, and we can apply the kind of scaling philosophy that we've brought to that. And the scaling is the key thing here. For far too long, ambitions of businesses really in Scotland were quite limited in the technology world. It was, oh yeah, I'm going to build this idea and I'm going to sell it to somebody in America or sell it to somebody in Japan. That's changing. Skyscanner actually did sell to a Chinese company called C-Trip recently, but not before it was over $1 billion in valuation. We just heard recently FanDuel, I don't know if you know FanDuel, but it's a fantasy sports company based in Edinburgh and the US, but founded in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh University graduates at the founding team. They were about to merge with an American company. That's off. They're back on their own, and they're $1 billion plus company. 2 hugely scaled tech businesses. The VCs from California are now starting to realize Scotland is someplace really quite special. So I'll wrap up this session by saying to you, look, giving you a bit about my journey, and really it was to try and illustrate that there is no straight path to doing something. You just have to go for it. Don't worry that you don't know everything. Learn as you go. Just be ready to move and ask for help. And there's lots of it out there for you now. Secondly, when you do decide to do something, don't limit your ambition. Don't ever hear yourself saying, oh, well, I can't do that because of where I am. Or you can do anything from here. The talent is here. The access to cash is here. You can make it happen here if you want to. And I think I'd leave you with the fact that 20 plus years into my journey, 25 years into my own journey as an entrepreneur, I still get up every day and love what I do. I'm still enthusiastic about every business we've got. I've spent the past day and a half in meetings with Microsoft talking about the next iteration of Minecraft and what we're going to do. And I've had a great day and a half. I still love games. I've got a Vsquared board meeting tomorrow. I'm incredibly excited about where that business can come from. And the thing that excites me most, generally in my professional life, is being part of things like informatics ventures and getting to see the amazing spin-outs from universities, from people like you yourselves saying, right, this is the challenge I've got, here's where I'm going to take it, because that's where I see the most opportunity and amazing things. So good luck to all of you in what you do next. Not all of you will want to go on an entrepreneurial journey, but for those of you that do, I'm here to say I'm still alive. I always kind of normally do the thing of, my name's Chris van der Kuyl, I'm an entrepreneur. It's been 3 days since I started my last business. But it's not Entrepreneurs Anonymous here today, it's SICSA, and you are in a community that I believe is one of the best in the world. I mean, I think we do have some of the best engineering talent in the world in Scotland today in our computer science faculties and informatics faculties. So thank you all for being here and doing it. Thanks for listening to me, and I'm happy to take some questions. And this is where no one puts up their hand. Go on, show me I'm wrong.
Keep them there till I'll finish, figure out how to work this one.
Questions, anyone? Comments, thoughts? Tell me I'm rubbish. Anything?
So how politically charged can we be?
How politically
Charged can we be?
can I be?
No, the questions.
Oh, as politically charged as you want.
So Brexit, what's your take?
Yeah, Brexit. So what's my take on Brexit? I'm more than happy to take that.
Apart from that, referendum, what's your take?
So Brexit and referendum. So Indie Ref and Brexit. Right, it's good. No, it's the right pair of questions. So as a technology entrepreneur, Indie Ref came along. And I sat and I thought, do you know what? I'm actually quite agnostic. With a name like van der Kuyl, I had one Dutch grandfather, one Polish grandfather, 2 Scottish grandmothers. I'm a true Euro mongrel. So I'm, I feel British. I, quite like what the United Kingdom's done in modern times, not necessarily ancient times, but in modern times. So I'm not against it. I love Scotland. I love being here. I love part of a lot of what it is to be Scottish. So I love that too. And I thought, do you know, I'm going to be agnostic in this. I want to hear both sides of the argument, and I want people to convince me what's going to be the best for me, my family, and building great businesses in Scotland. And I heard in the independence referendum a fantastic argument about how we can really go for it. It was a very entrepreneurial argument. Let's do it. We don't have all the answers, but we can do it. And I thought, okay, that's good. Okay, give me the other argument about how the UK can do it. And I just heard, it's a disaster. It'll all go horribly wrong. Whatever happens, don't do it. It's the worst thing you can say to an entrepreneur. Anybody tells me I can't do something, I go, right, there's an opportunity there that they're not telling me about. They're trying to put me off. So I was kind of naturally attracted to that argument. But on balance, I kind of sat and I talked to my colleagues in Entrepreneurial Scotland and said, look, do you know what? Either yes or no, we'll still be here the next day. So I think it'll be that microphone that's feeding back. Yeah, no, it's just because it's pointing at the speakers. You point it towards yourself, and that's it. Thank you. I used to be a sound engineer as well. So that's, in fact, I was actually on mixing desk training today because I'm doing front of house at Edinburgh Castle this summer, which will be fun. But anyway, it's another story. Back to the Indie Ref. So I kind of, at the end of the day, I thought, no, more compelling argument, but do you know what? Either way will be fine. Except, and this, I'll be absolutely honest, I voted yes to the first independence referendum for one reason and one reason only, because I looked south of the border and I thought, the disaster scenario here is we vote no, then a European referendum happens and they vote to come out of Europe. And we're stuck because we voted no partially on the basis that this was the only way to stay in Europe, and then suddenly we're not in Europe. And that convinced me that was the right way to go. And I hate to say it, but I called it. So I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised when the Brexit referendum came. And, in my view, for our industry specifically, and I'll only comment on that, it's an unmitigated disaster. I have EU nationals on staff today. I've got one who falls short of the 5-year rule, and he's panicking. And we go, look, we'll do everything. We'll make sure. But can you guarantee? No, I can't guarantee anything because I don't know. One of my colleagues in a company called Outplay came in the press today. He's got a big business. He has maybe 50 or 60 EU nationals in there. He's like, this is a disaster. I now, he didn't before, he said, I now support Scotland becoming independent. On Independence Referendum 2, which I believe the First Minister's making an announcement on today, I actually, for different reasons, I don't think we should at the moment, because uncertainty is killing us at the moment. You know, there are people, whether they'll admit it or not, that are stopping short of investing in Scotland, and you know, because of uncertainty around it. So we need a bit of certainty right now and stability, and I think that's probably what she'll say today. She'll probably say, look, no, we need to get through Brexit properly. So we do need to do that. So no, would I want to be where we are today? And that as a technology entrepreneur, no. It's absolute stupidity that goes back to the previous government's leadership. You know, they walked us into this, the UK government, thinking it was never going to happen. You know, think it was never going to happen. It's real stupidity. However, it's happening. So as an entrepreneur, we need to not just make the best of it, but we need to try and find advantage in it. Because I can sit and moan at you. So I've given you an honest opinion that I think it was terrible, but we are where we are, and it would be stupid to try and pretend we're not. So we're now trying to find out how we move forward with it. So to me, we need to bring a layer of stability. So second independence referendum right now is the wrong thing to do. Steer this through and negotiate it. But what a shambles. You know, an omni-shambles, I think, is the correct word for it. There's one little theme, actually, when you said can be political, that I actually think it's much more... I'm definitely somebody who thinks in a global context. I've never, ever built a business to serve a Scottish market. Every business I've ever built has been built with global software mindset. I want to build product. I want to sell it in as many countries as possible. And that's just how I think. I wouldn't begin to think about making software that worked in Scotland and only in Scotland. To me, that's dumb. You know, a lot of the time people say you can only build a business in America is because of access to market. But I don't see that as a barrier. I can build software for the American market, and I do. So that's how I work. The one thing that's really bothering me at the moment, far more than Brexit, although Brexit is a symptom, is a kind of global rise of populism and the kind of politicians that are appearing. Many of them older generation politicians, many of them elected on a ticket of disquiet and unhappiness with, and they point at immigration, they point at, it's terrible, it's all the... I actually think we need to all look at ourselves a bit in this. Because I do think one of the principal reasons behind a lot of this uncertainty, that people don't actually realise it's why they're saying it, is the technological revolution that we're living through. We're all having a great time. I have never had a better time in my life in terms of access to technology. I've almost got a self-driving car and a Tesla. It's like, whoa, science fiction's coming through, true. It's an amazing time for my business, personally, everything. But then I look at people who, either because they're economically disenfranchised, they're educationally disenfranchised, or, and it's not about an age number, but psychologically they can't bring themselves to embrace technology, and they're all being left behind. They're being left behind by massive societal changes that we all think are normal, because we're living right in the middle of it, and it's our everyday food, meat and veg, food and drink. It's what we do. It's kind of incumbent on us, I think, over the next 10 or 20 years, as technologists, to actually look at society a bit, and rather than say somebody else, politicians' problems to fix, I think we need to look at how we can help them as well, because we've got a responsibility, because otherwise we will get into things that have happened before in history. People are so disenfranchised that they start to come against probably us. Luddites did it, if you go back and look in history, they smashed up mills because they didn't like the fact that steam-driven mills were putting them out of jobs. People will get violent when self-driving cars put every driver out of business. It's going to happen probably inside 10 years. There'll be people who will sit with vehicles for security reasons possibly, or robots might do that, but nobody's going to drive them. Think how many people that disenfranchises, and ask yourself, what am I doing to think about how we can help those people transition? So that's my little political thing. It's not party political, it's more a global issue that we've got responsibility for.
Any other questions? Just stick your hand up the microphone.
There's one down the front here. Anybody else with itchy fingers?
Hi, Chris. Just over the past, this is slightly not very political, but over the past decade or so, I think, I can see research in computer science sort of going away from it, but we have the likes of your Xerox Parks and your AT&T Bell Labs and stuff like that, that don't seem to be doing as well as they used to. I mean, they used to have their glory days. Yeah. And I seem to get the feeling that more and more research is moving into the public domain, into the lands of university/government or sure, and not much. There's more short-term and medium-term, very medium-term research coming out of companies. But as an entrepreneur, do you think that's because computer science has gotten so much more difficult and the goals, the profits that you're getting are more and more long-term?
Well, I actually think there's a couple of things in that question. I think universities are getting better at, they've always been good at research, but I mean, in terms of stuff that's applicable as well. I mean, I look at the programme of research that the Bayes Institute in Edinburgh is going to have, and I'm incredibly excited by the teams that are there, by the quality of people that are in there. So that's good news, and things like, although it's still quite early days for it, things like the Turing Institute, far more collaboratively looking to put some serious money into research in the UK. Great. On the flip side, I think the corporates, there are so many opportunities today. They've had to take the best research heads they can and put them onto programs that are quite close to market. There's just a shortage of us. If there's one giant ask for all of us, it's to get kids playing Minecraft to learn programming, using Scratch, shouting at every school you possibly can to make computer science as important as English or maths. I don't think anyone should leave our school system not fundamentally understanding how to code. They might not ever become a professional programmer or a computer scientist, but they should be able to understand anything you tell them and communicate and understand the impact of what you can do to something they can do. The thing that drives me insane is I have a procession of people through my door who think they have a good idea for technology, and you have to sit and explain to them that, well, if you actually half knew, I'm not as condescending as this, but knew what technology did, you would realise that that's a really stupid thing to ask me, and let me try and explain this to you. And there's lots of companies preying on people like that at the moment. People are far too ignorant en masse to what is probably the single most important backbone spine of our society today. In terms of the implications of the internet and everything else that hangs off it. So if you then go and look at some of the quality of teams that are hiding out in Apple, Google, you name it, there's some amazing, amazing people in there, and they're throwing ridiculous amounts of money, unsustainable amounts of money at people. And then I go across and think, maybe the world's changed a bit. So you go and look at Elon Musk, drafting in squads of games programmers into SpaceX because he realizes that they can actually solve rocket science problems in a different, more collaborative way, in a faster way. And actually, rather than going and spending 3 years publishing a paper, it's the lean and agile method of try it and fail, try it and fail, try it and fail. Whoop, we've landed a rocket on a moving boat, and we can now do it consistently. So partly I think the world's changing, in those terms as well, in the function of research and how it works. So, but still, to me, fundamental research sits far better inside a properly robust academic environment than it does out in. I mean, in many ways, you could say Xerox Park was part of Stanford, but with a bit of funding in the side, and you'll find labs like that inside universities today. So I don't know if that answers your question. Right at the very back for one more.
This better be a question with a short answer, Jeremy.
That's to me.
All right. Thanks. I want to ask you about the balance between doing stuff at home and learning at school. So you said your intro to computing was when you got a computer at home, right? And you were saying put computers in schools. So can you talk about the balance between those?
Sure. It's a great question. I think, so my personal experience, got access to play with this thing at the weekends, as I said, but one of the big defining factors for me was the schools system in the UK at that point was going through a programme with the BBC in Acorn in Cambridge to put microcomputers in every school. So we were the first school in Scotland that actually had a national certification. I did the A-level before the higher existed in Scotland. So I had a great school tuition in real computer science. So it was a bit of both. I think the balance is going to shift though, because I think learning's shifting so quickly in that there's now, the only reason, and this is an important reason, to come to school is to collaborate. You know, ultimately, if, and not everybody is, but if people were self-driven and had access to the right tutorial support, they would never really need to leave their house. Except that when you come into an environment where there are other people, magic starts to happen. And school should be far more about making that magic happen than banging facts into your head. You know, so there's far better ways to do that. You know,
Same with universities.
Same with universities. In fact, universities have traditionally been better at that. You know, it's one of the defining factors of a great university is come to lectures when you want, do what you want, but make magical stuff happen and we'll reward you for it. And I think you'll see that start to drift down. Discipline is still important in young people, you know, getting good habits and all that kind of stuff. So you have to work out how you do it. But ultimately, we've got a technologically driven environment that can finally unleash, I think, true creativity, collaboration, and amazing things. So I'm pretty excited about what the next couple of decades bring.